Welcome to the Honest Business Podcast. This is the show for ambitious, value-driven business owners who are actively building a business that works for them. Hi, I'm May James, and I'm here to make scaling your business easier and more rewarding than ever. Each week, we will dive into simple, sustainable strategy and pragmatic leadership discussion to support you as you take imperfect action on your entrepreneurial journey. If you want to stay ahead, exceed your growth goals, and have a purposeful, thriving business, then keep on listening. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Okay, we are talking today about making investments in your business. This is a fun one because I like helping people work out what investments they're going to make in the business, which might sound a bit weird. So yes, I am a strategist, consultant, a mentor, coach, depending on who is hiring me for what thing. But part of my role sometimes is helping people, often actually, decide where they should be spending money next. So this isn't an episode necessarily about how to find a coach, what you should look for, because I know there's lots of episodes like that, and that's great, we need them. But that's not necessarily what this is. This is more about how do you make an investment in your business, and just my thought process around it, having helped many people spend various amounts of money on business, whether that's you're going to spend 30 quid or you're going to spend, 30 grand plus, whatever. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so investments, when to make them. When we look at making investments in your business, be really clear on what it is you're investing in. So often we need to make multiple investments, and so we need to invest in team, marketing, branding, coaching, training for the staff. Like, there could be so many different things. Equipment, it could be everything. Sometimes when we talk about making investments in our business, we often just think about one thing, i.e. hiring a coach, and that's not what this is about. This is about a collection of different things in your business and when you should do it, and cash flow comes into this, right? So cash flow is a big thing, which I'm not going to go hugely into because although I help people a lot with cash flow, it's not necessarily my profession, i.e. I'm not a trained accredited accountant. But when we look at making investments, I want you to get really clear on what it is. So I'm going to go through this episode as if you're going to make an investment, but we can talk objectively about many different investments. So when you look at making an investment in your business, first of all, get clear on what it is you want it to do. This is something that people don't have a clue half the time, and they just chuck money at it because they think it's going to work. Doesn't matter what size your business is, people believe that that's going to happen. We do it in our personal lives, right? It's like, we're not happy, let's go and get a new haircut. This isn't working out, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And we try and chuck money at problems a lot of the time, and that's not necessarily what's going to be the best situation for you. It might be, but it might not be. The other thing to look at is what kind of investments are you wanting to make. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to detour into talking about the stuff that people come to me about investing in, which is like mentor and coach and education, that kind of thing, because I just think this is interesting for people. If you're currently looking at that right now, thinking like, where am I going to go with that? And am I investing in a coach and something? I want to just say to you, and I get this out the way so that we can then go on and discuss other things, because I know I've just mentioned we're not going to talk about this, but we are going to talk about it. Some of you are like switching off, like, oh, she's so annoying. If you are wondering right now whether you should invest in a coach, should you invest in a mastermind, should you invest in a group program, should you invest in education, a workshop, a course, a retreat, all of these different things, a membership, what you need to get clear on is, what is it that you want to do? What is it you need help with? Now, what I am going to say is, for someone who delivers a lot of this, is you probably don't know. You probably don't know what you need. You probably think you need something and it's not what you need. And you probably want something that's different to what you need. So let me clarify this. The trend that I see, and we're going to see it a lot more in 2022 as the world opens up with COVID. But before COVID, this happened, and now it's going to start happening, is masterminds often include a retreat. Okay? Perfect. Amazing. Lovely. Retreat, really powerful. Then, everyone who part of the retreat is at someone's job, or it might be the host's job, to film the retreat, to picture the retreat, to put it on Instagram, to put it wherever, and they promote it and people want to watch it. And I love watching them, right? If someone's on a retreat, I'm like, yep, let's watch it. I can't wait, because we're sat at home, we're not having a great time, so we're just going to sit and watch the retreat, and it's fun. It's great, right? So we all watch the retreat, we're watching along, looks really good, all the rest of it. And then we're like, well, we want to go on a retreat. So then we start thinking about, how are we going to get on a retreat? And then conveniently, and I say this, by the way, I'm not saying it to be sarcastic in the sense of like the person who's doing this is wrong. I'm just explaining what tends to happen. The person who's hosting the retreat knows that people are watching their stories, knows the story views go up, know the retention's high, and know that people are interested, know that people are checking out the mastermind page of how do we get on the retreat. So then they go, let's just do a retreat. why don't we do a retreat? And if you're listening to this and you're in this world, you'll know, like, you might be able to sit here thinking, yeah, I've heard, I know exactly what's happened, or I've done this, or I've seen this, like, and it's not bad. I'm just explaining to you because many people don't realize they're doing this until they've like done it, and then they're like, oh, and people have come to me and have said that this has happened to them, and then come back and think, why did I just spend like X amount of money? But this is down the line, so hang on. So, you know, the person then doing the retreat thinks, why don't we let people come on a retreat, but they don't have to be part of the mastermind? So maybe you're going to run a separate retreat or an event or a day event even, because anything about a retreat is all about, you know, the glamour, the luxury, the connection. Let's not go away from that. The connection, the in-personness, which we're all craving right now. That's really the kind of pull on a retreat. So then they're like, okay, let's do a retreat for people, just anyone. You can just come, you can pay. If you've got the money, you can pay, you can come type thing. And there might be entry requirements, there might not be. So then they put that out, and they might even put it out while they're still on the retreat. So if they're still on the retreat, it's like so much cooler, right? Because it's like, oh my goodness, we're still wrapped up in this. It still could be me. This could be me. You can picture yourself. And I want you to get really clear on, as a sales professional, this is embedding you into the sales process. Now, I am not saying that these people that are doing that are malicious, are bad, or unauthentic. Not all. They are some of the most amazing people. All I'm saying to you is the reason you want to buy it is because you're in the sales process, but you've sped up the sales process. Because if you've watched something, you've already visioned yourself in it, you are like further down the line. You're at the point of conversion. A lot of you are at the point of conversion while you're watching the stories. You don't even know. You don't even think you've never been to a retreat, not interested, never want to go at one. After you've watched it for 3 days, 2 days even, you're like so wrapped up in it, and are like, I can see myself there because people who look like me are there. You see a collection of people. There might be 5, there might be 10, there might be 30, there might even be 40 people, who knows, 50. And you have found someone who looks like you or has been on a journey that you've been on. You're like, I want this. This looks great. Like, let's do it. I really want it. And so you're then all the way down the sales process compared to if someone was going to launch a retreat without already having done one and people already being warmed up to it. It's a whole different launch process, okay? When you're on the retreat, people are then already bought in. So then they're like, here's the link. Here's the application. Here's the buy button. Whatever it is. Stripe, whoever, whatever, who knows. You can buy it there and then. Now, what's amazing about this tactic, and I don't know why we've got on this tangent because this is not even about this, but hey ho. This whole process, what often means is the price of the retreat is so much like dumbed down in your brain because you're so ready to buy. So it might be that it's like $7,000, $5,000, $3,000, $6,000, $10,000. I mean, you can pay anything for a retreat, okay? Then what happens is your brain starts to rationalize why you want to buy this. Now, before this, I just want to be clarified because people who sell this stuff might be really interested in this, or sell, you know, anything in the online space or any industry. The immediate aversion that doesn't come up, that normally comes up, is gone when this kind of thing's happening because you've already envisioned yourself being there and you've already kind of gone past the rationalization because you're already there. So your brain, you don't get the immediate pullback that you would do if I turn around to you on a random Tuesday and said, hey, do you want to go on a retreat? It's $7,000. And you go, I can't go on something $7,000. I don't have $7,000 to my name. I'm not going. I don't want to go. Like, no. But some weird thing, because you're already there, because you've already consumed it all, because you've already essentially, you're like going through a living sales page, right? You're living it. You're there. You're with them. The video, the sound, the thing, they maybe give you like a snapshot of something that's been on so you can feel like you're there and you can see the value. You're just like, do you know what? $7,000's not even that bad. I can do it. I'm going to find a way to do it. I want to do it. And then we start rationalizing the investment through the things that people add. And they add things very strategically to make you want to buy, obviously, because we create offers that people want to buy. So this is not, again, I don't want this to come across as like I'm bashing anybody. I'm really not. I'm just trying to explain to you what goes on. So then you're like, okay, I get the retreat and it's all cool and whatever. And then what happens is normally people will add some kind of like support channel so that you can get to know each other before you go. Because why do you want to just turn up with a load of people you have no clue who they are? Most people want to know them. So then they go into that. You might also then get a one-to-one with someone, which is another key amazing tactic. Because again, one-to-one with people who are hosting retreats can often be hard to get to, or you've got to sign up for a long period of time, etc., etc. So they might offer you a one-to-one session. You might get 2, who knows, it might be half an hour, whatever. They might offer a one-to-one capacity. That immediately is going to spark your interest and spark this idea that the investment is so worthwhile. Because if you're going to buy this session on its own, it's going to be X amount of money and it makes sense. So again, we're like, the brain is like, okay, maybe it's 7 grand. And again, this could be 3 grand, 2 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, whatever it is. But let's just go with 7, because 7 kind of tends to be somewhere in what people charge. Say it's 7 grand. If it's got 1-to-1 in it, it's already reducing it, okay? So it becomes this like amazing thing that you're just like, oh my goodness, I have to be in this. I have to be in this container. I am going to be in it, and I don't care what I got to do. Heaven or high water, I'm in there. And it's so fascinating to watch, okay? So this often happens and people go for it, and it's cool, you know, it's cool to see. It's nice to see people's buying behavior. I love it when people's buying behavior shortens. I love when people's buying journey shortens, because it's so fascinating to let people see them get to the next level. So one of the reasons I do actually like it is because I love to see people take action who wouldn't normally take action. And the really interesting thing is with a retreat and this kind of style that I've just explained to you is that often the people who respond are not the people who normally respond to other things. It's so fascinating, because essentially you're triggering this internal desire and this internal need for that thing. And so often it's different. It's like a different group of people to the people who would normally just say, yeah, do you know what? I've got 7 grand to invest. I don't care what it is. I'm going to invest in it. So it's really interesting to see the change. I know this podcast episode has taken that kind of dive, but I think this is good to go into because some of you might be interested. Some of you probably aren't, but hey ho. And so we go through this process of people saying yes, and people want to join, and it's amazing. And then obviously it's great for the retreat hosts because they're going to have a really good, you know, injection of cash, and they're going to enjoy it and all the rest of it. And that's cool. So although we've gone off on a tangent there, I just wanted to explain that because I think retreats are really interesting. So let's just talk about retreats. Retreats are interesting. They can be amazing. They can be great for network building. They can be great for getting you out of your current reality, which I think is really important. So we have like a VIP day called CEO Strategy Day that we do with leaders, and that's all about getting people out of their reality. And I think that's similar. A retreat can do that even more so if it's over a longer period of time. So I think that's really key. I think that's great. I think retreats can be great for shifting perspective. It can be great for expanding your vision of what's possible. It can help you take a break. It can help you really move into, yeah, this is the lifestyle for me. It can help you see more of the longer term vision, which for some people they're stuck. So for some people they're like so stuck in their business, a retreat can be amazing because it can really pull them out and it can really accelerate and reignite that fire that they feel like they've lost. However, one thing that does bother me about retreats is that often they are a lot of money, because inevitably they are, because it's in person. They're a lot of money sometimes, and they're kind of a short-term fix and a band-aid, and that worries me a lot. So, and again, this is not me sit here telling you what you should and shouldn't invest in, because that's up to you. But I want to make you aware of this because I think it's really important. I think retreats are fantastic for people who've got businesses, who are already moving along, who's already got a lot going on, and you as the CEO need to kind of take a step out and really envision things. And I would argue that most people who are in that situation, a retreat can be good for, can be really good. What I don't think it's great for is if you're already confused, you're not really making money, and you need to make money, and it's just kind of a like ditch attempt. I just don't think that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. I think retreats are good because they kind of allow you to kind of cut down the time of networking. Like, some people will go on a retreat just because there's a person there who they know they need to speak to and they know they want to connect with. And that, you know, fine, like, go for it. It might be worth the money. I don't think, I'm never the person to say it's not worth the money, because I do things that are quite ballsy and very calculated and very like strategic just for a certain thing. So I often think, you know, fine, if you know someone else is going and you're like, I want to get in that crowd of people, then fine. But again, this is about speaking to a certain type of person. So if you're listening to this podcast, maybe you are at that point of things are all going well, you're making consistent money, like, you know, you're making a level of money where there's profit coming and it makes sense for you, then that's maybe a time for you to go on a retreat. But if you're listening to this podcast and you're not, or, you know, you're in a growth phase where you know you need to invest a lot in different areas, I'm not necessarily going to be the first one to say go on a retreat, just in my opinion. Again, you can completely override me, that's fine. So I think being clear on a retreat is important. The other thing that bugs me with a retreat, which other people you can let me know what you think on this. When I think of a retreat, I want to pay a lump of money and not have to worry at all, and just for the whole lot to be taken care of. So, I don't expect the flight or like wherever you're going, the travel to be paid for, because that is a nightmare for people. So, that's fine. But I expect if I'm going on a retreat, this is just me personally, by the way, this is not industry standard. I'm just saying for me, I want to get to wherever I'm going. And from me getting there to it ending, I don't want to have to think about anything. Because it's not a holiday, but it kind of is a holiday, right? It's like you're going, it's business, it's work, but it's also like a bit of a chill out, it's a fun time, etc. You're not paying a load of money to go and like be, it's not like, for instance, like a CEO strategy day. It's very like you go because you're going for a reason. And although we make it very much like a fun time, but that's a side note. I just want to say, like with a retreat, for me, it's like I get there, I want to be taken care of from when I get there to when I leave. That is not the case. And I didn't realise this either. For many times I was like, oh, okay. So what happens is, a lot of the time, your accommodation isn't even included in the price. And I was like, really? I didn't realise that was like a thing. So often you can pay like $7,000, $10,000, whatever. And the accommodation and the flights, which the flights I think is fine, but the accommodation isn't included. Maybe the food isn't even included. Some people will have it so that the food's included on, the lunch is included, but your dinner isn't and your breakfast isn't, providing you're going to book accommodation with breakfast or something. And so you only get a meal maybe for that day. And you're like, oh, or you only get refreshments during the day. And so there's very many things I would consider when you're going to book a retreat to really look at, because people don't, like what I assume would come with it, a lot of the time they don't. And it was really like eye-opening, and I was like, oh, okay. And it's not that it's bad, it's just, and I understand why people don't do it, right? For profit-wise, for logistics, like it's a pain in the backside to try and organise however many hotel rooms or whatever you need for however many people, like it's a lot. But for me, I was like, I feel like I'm paying a lump of money, I was expecting that to come. No, that's not how it works for some people. So be really clear if you're going to invest in a retreat of all the logistics and what that means, and especially in this COVID world of like what it means, because I know that's difficult of like, well, does it get cancelled, who gets the money, etc, etc. So that's my thoughts on a retreat, and we can talk more on retreats if anyone's interested, but that didn't mean to go on for that long. But that's something I want to, oh no, hang on, let me round up this. The roundup point I wanted to create on this is also that if you go on a retreat, you've got to be realistic in what it can do for you. People have, like, I have seen people come to me and have spent a hell of a lot of money on a retreat for them to come back and be like, well, nothing's changing my business. I'm like, well, yeah, but what are you expecting to change? Like, you can't expect the person who's putting on the retreat to change your business while you're there. Like, it's just not realistic. And I do think it's important for people who are selling retreats to be realistic in what it is the purpose of the whole thing is, but also it's important for you to take responsibility. So be really clear on, if it's a retreat, it's more often than not in a group. So what is it going to be achieved through that, and where does that kind of tick boxes? So for me, when I look at going on a retreat, it's like networking box, CEO as in me, like my box, fill my cup, fill my inspiration, all of that thinking, and that can be worth it in itself, right? So you don't have to rationalize this by saying like it has to be X, Y, and Z. I'm just saying that these are the things that go through my head when I kind of look at it. What I don't think about with a retreat is necessarily solid strategy. Yes, you might get solid strategy. Yes, you're going to get tips. There might be guest speakers. There might be things. But in terms of like an actual solid, like this is what we are doing, that might not come from the retreat. It might, but it might not. And so be really clear with yourself on like what is it that what boxes do you want ticked from what investment, i.e. the retreat. The other thing to think about, so let's just park that whole thing for now, since we've been on a tangent. I hope you enjoyed it. And let's go into other investments. I think when to make an investment is really important. Often the time you need to make an investment is not going to be the right time. So it's never going to, I don't want to say never. Often it doesn't feel right. Often there's an urgency that you need to create for yourself that your body is probably telling you not to. It might be that someone in your team says, we really need to make this investment, and you hadn't even thought about it, and it comes from a complete eye-open of just like, oh God, I didn't even think about that. And then you have to act on it. So be really clear on when to make one. What I would say is don't sit on making decisions too much. I see a lot of people wanting to invest in something and wait, and the price goes up, or the opportunity changes, and they were inevitably always going to make the investment. So sometimes I just say to people, make the damn investment. Like, just do it, because that makes sense. But sometimes, you might need to communicate more and work out what the clear next steps is. The thing I want to really touch on today is taking your ego out of making an investment. And that comes with the retreat example. It comes with, all different types of things. When we make investments in our business, many of us do it from an ego-based position because a lot of it is interest and fun stuff, right? It's like you might make a vehicle investment in your business. Well, that can just be so ego-driven because it's like, what sort of car do we need? How much does it need to be? How many do we need? Do we need an electric one? Do we get a Tesla because we can write the whole thing off? Blah, 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 blah. We end up down a rabbit hole. That I want you to think about. Okay, what is the ego stopping you from doing here? Like, where do you need to put the foot down and say, no, this is the ego and my kind of like just running away with things, self-doing? Because I've seen mistakes being made. I've seen people spend money on things that in months or years down the line, they think, why on earth did you buy that? What were you thinking? Why did you do that? So be really clear on when is the ego coming out to play. It's like, the whole example of the retreat. And when I was talking about people who are watching people on a retreat and therefore they want to be at the retreat and therefore they're going to pay for it much sooner. A lot of people will have done that. And then they think, hang on a minute, I've spent the $7,000. I could have gone on holiday. Do I want to go on holiday? Would the holiday make more sense? Now, if you can afford it, great, go on both. And I think I'm talking here to a specific group of people. So if you're in the group who can do both, then great, go and do both. Like, I'm the first person to say, spend the money, go and do both, like, enjoy it, all the rest of it. But if you're someone who doesn't enjoy a retreat, but you're just going because you feel like you need to, then don't. But also, if you're someone who can't afford to do both or can't afford even the retreat in itself, but you're convinced you're going to go, be clear on yourself. Like, be really open of like, hang on, is this for me? Like, do I actually need to do this? Because something like a retreat or buying a car because you fancy buying a car might not be the key strategic thing that you need to do to get to the next level of business. And again, this is hard because it's nuanced and it's very dependent on the person and where you are in business. But I think it's really important because so many people can just let their ego run with things and then they get back and they think, yeah, maybe didn't need to do that. What I would really invest and look at and clearly think about when you're investing is the longevity of the investment. This is the thing that needs to be really taken into account. So you have to accept that some investments you make are short term and some are longer term. Can all of the longer term ones then be longer term? Yes, of course they can. So for example, I would classify a retreat as a short term investment. But there's always someone who can argue on the other side and say, that could change my life. Some people might have been in a retreat and they have heard one word from someone that completely pivoted the whole business, changed it, sent them in a whole new direction and has made them millions. That's fine. I'm just going to speak on a whole, generally. I see things like a workshop, a retreat, if we're looking at the educational side of things, that's the kind of stuff that I think, okay, it's a shorter term. Then you have like mid-term and then you have longer term investments. And you place them, and each person's going to place a different type of thing in a different position because it depends on their experience and who they've invested in and what the whole thing was like. But there's different things for different stages. So for example, investing in something like a one-to-one coaching situation, that for me, I see as like a really solid longer term investment because it's a high touch, it's a regular touch, it's a, really longer lasting thing. So yes, even the container itself might be longer. So you might have a retreat for 3 days, but you might have a one-to-one coaching thing that's 12 or 6 months long. But what I'm more looking at is what is the longer term impact of what they can get. Now, could you do 6 months one-on-one coaching with someone and, get the same, not get anything from it? Yes. And you could go on the retreat for 3 days and get more from it than you did for the 6 months. Of course you could. But just on a generalized basis, I personally see when I make investments for myself and when I also see others and clients invest in, where I see the kind of value add be. Because I want to make something clear here, and I don't think many people talk about this or think about this maybe, is yes, I am a business consultant, I'm a coach, depending on who works with me, but I help people to work out where they spend their money, okay? I am not afraid of encouraging people to go and work with other people who might do similar or the same things to me if I know there's something that they have that I just think is not right for me to do. And so I'm always really open and kind of encouraging people to make certain investments because I know that this can sound like I'm saying, don't make any investments. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you have to be in control of your cash flow. And many of you aren't. And many of you are scared by money. You're scared by making investments in your business because you don't understand the money you've got in the first place. And so if that's the kind of situation, then please don't go and make investments if you don't have a clue. Like, and I say don't have a clue, I don't mean that patronizingly. I just mean, like, be really clear on yourself, because you can make a more empowered choice when you understand what your current situation is. And many people don't know what they're doing, and so they just chuck money at things and hope that it's going to transform things. So when you're thinking about the longevity of the business and the longevity of the investment, match up where that's at. Also match up where are you at currently as the CEO, and where are you going, and where does the investment fit. So for me, for example, I make generally long-term investments. I make really, I'm happy to sign 6-month contracts, 12-month contracts, big sums of money, because I that's how I work. I like that longer-term thing. I see a higher ROI, in my opinion. But there are times where I will just buy a workshop, or I'll buy a course, or I'll buy a set of some templates or whatever. And, often they can be quite a lower investment. And so it's an easier decision on people. But you have to be clear on where you're at and where the business is at and where you're prepared to spend time. Because the one thing people forget about is money's one thing when you're making an investment in your business. But often the worst bit is if you spend the money, then you don't have the time to do the investment. And this is something I've seen a lot. So, you could have the money, and let's be honest, right? You can spend a load of money. Say you spend 30 grand and it actually wasn't worth the 30 grand and it was a disaster. You can still make the 30 grand. So in the long scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, eventually, it's not really that much of an issue, right? Yes, you've lost 30 grand, but eventually you can make it. But what you can't make is time. You can never buy time. Doesn't matter how much money you've got, you can't buy your time back, right? So you have to think really clearly of, if you're going to make X investment in your business, can I show up to the time? So a good example for me in my business is some clients come to me for a CEO strategy day because they only have the time to dedicate to me for that chunk of time, and therefore they want to come, have everything they need, and then they go and they leave. Other people want to force themselves to commit on a bi-weekly basis or however much they're going to see me, and commit to a longer term thing because they know they want that constant check-in, and they know that's going to help them in the long term to manage their time more efficiently. But either of those scenarios, you have to get really clear on what are you prepared to do with your time, and what are you prepared to give people who are helping you. Because I can't work with anyone who won't give me their time for whatever I need them for. So, I offer them my time, but if they come and work with me and they haven't got the time to have a call, then it's not going to work. So get them really clear on what are you available for, and what is your time allowing you to do is really, really important. It's really crucial for this kind of longevity piece of the investment. The other thing to be open with yourself is about setting realistic expectations of an investment. So be really open and clear with yourself. And I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to, because we know how crazy this world is. You can make an investment and they will say that it's going to do X, Y, and Z thing, but in reality it's not, and it does the other X, Y, and Z thing. And you need to get really clear on personally what is your expectation from it, not what is written on a sales page or written on an opt-in page for you to then click. Because people sadly out here are claiming wild and crazy things. So be realistic with yourself. If a sales page says, this is just an example, I have no clue what people, this is not on someone's specific retreat, but we'll go with the retreat example. If someone has on the retreat page, this retreat is going to give you all the tools that you need to create a 7-figure business in 2 days, okay? Be realistic with yourself. Where are you at right now in your business? What do you already know? What do you need to know? Where are you going? Be open with yourself. What's a realistic expectation for you? Do you want that end promise? Do you not? What makes sense for you? Is it that you're currently making 20 grand a month and you want to make 30? That might be your expectation. Have a strategy that's clear to get you from X to Y. Be open with yourself around expectations of what the investment's going to give you. The other thing to think about is hold yourself accountable. So you make the investment, and then you have to, you've made the investment, you've decided you have the time. Be accountable to what you said you're going to do. Because you can only get as much from the investment as you're going to choose to give yourself. Like, you can come and pay me all the money, but if you don't show up and don't do the work and you don't want to engage, then it's never going to work, right? It's about you holding yourself accountable. And yes, the person you've made an investment with might have some kind of accountability set up and might have some way of keeping you accountable, but ultimately it's down to you. And, you know, when you hear people who aren't happy with investments, sometimes it's because they haven't been accountable. Because people believe that if they spend a lot of money on something, it's going to allow them to not have to show up or not allow them to not be accountable. And it's the complete opposite, right? So you need to fully be aware of, like, what is it that you are going to be accountable to? And what are you committing to do for the duration of the investment? The next thing to think about is look at your long-term vision when you're going to make an investment. And what is the long-term vision? And what is the investment going to allow you to do? Because people make investments and they think that the investment has to fix everything in their business, and it really doesn't. So I make investments a lot of the time where it's only going to target like a tiny little bit, but that's fine. Because if I can get a tiny little bit better in that area, then it makes sense. So for example, you might think you need to spend on your marketing because your marketing's not working for you. But it might be that there's no point in spending loads of money on your marketing until you sort your sales strategy out. So then it might be, okay, I need to look strategically at this. And you might not know that about the sales strategy. This is the other thing I want to say. So when I said you might not know what you need, you might think marketing. Then you might have a call with someone who might help you with your marketing. And if they're really good and they're really amazing and they might be really kind, they might say to you, do you know what? I think this is great, but I think before you need to do that, you need to go and do X, Y, Z thing. And so they might say, go and work on your sales strategy. Now, many people won't. I do, and there's other people in my industry who do. And, you know, I can say to someone, come back once you've done X, Y, and Z thing, or do this thing and then you can come and do whatever. Be really open with yourself on the long-term vision and what the goals are. But then also remember that you have to pull back sometimes in order to go forward. You have to go a few steps back to get there. So for example, you then might go and make an investment on your sales strategy, get that fully nailed down so that the person who's doing your marketing knows that once you spend the money, it's going to make sense. It's like if you're going to do ads, if you're going to spend money on marketing and give someone a load of money to do ads, if your conversion is never going to happen anyway, it doesn't matter how much traffic you get through that funnel. If the conversion is not there and the sales strategy doesn't make sense, it ain't going to work. So you're going to waste all that money on that investment when actually what you needed to do was spend the money on a different investment and then go to the marketing person and spend on that. So, and that's just one example. There's many examples. And it could be that you've got to go 3 steps back, right? It might be, you know, you're going to the marketing because you need to make more money, but the marketing saying, hang on a minute, you look at your sales strategy. You go and look at your sales strategy, but then the person who's helping with that says, hang on a minute, you don't even know what your business is and you don't even know what the person you're serving or helping is or what they need. So then you've got to go to someone else. Now, of course, you might be able to find someone who can, you know, serve you on all those levels. But what I'm just trying to demonstrate here is what you think you need might not be what it is that you need or you want to invest in. And it might not be the best for longer term because most people are making investments on a short-term vision. And if you are making investments on a short-term vision, it doesn't necessarily help you in the longer term. I.e., you might buy something and then actually realize doesn't make sense for where I'm going. It doesn't make sense for where you're at. A great example of this is I made a really bad investment. It wasn't bad. Hang on, let me clear that up as well. Let me go on and then I'll clear it up. So I made an investment and I was too young in my business to make it. It was too fresh. I didn't need the thing I invested in. I invested in this piece of software, like a big piece of software that was really amazing. It was a sales funnel type thing and it was really good. And the actual piece of software is amazing. People have made millions off it. It's bloody amazing. But for where I was missold it. And that's a whole other story of why I was missold. I was missold it through an affiliate and that's a whole other episode. But I was missold it. I didn't need it. At that part of business, it didn't make sense to. And the person on the other end was saying, yes. They were like, yes, it's great. If you start on your business or you're in this stage, it's perfect. And it wasn't. And it really kind of threw me back. And what's really interesting about this example is, so anyway, the product itself's great, it works, but it doesn't work, it wasn't right for me where I was in that time. And the thing that really was annoying was that it held me back for months, and it held me back for ages in areas across the board. It wasn't even to do with the topic that I'd invested in. So I bought this piece of software And I not only bought it, and I bought a training course, and I bought this thing, I also was paying monthly for it as well, as an additional thing. So you already paid a chunk of money, and then I was paying monthly for this thing. Never used it, never even logged onto it. Had logged into the training thing, hadn't even logged into the actual software. And they'd been taking my money for months. And it took me months and months and months before I finally took the decision and cancelled it and said, no, this is ridiculous. Why are you doing this? And it took a coach, one of my coaches, to turn around and say, mate, this has got to stop. Why you keep on going? And we keep on going because we believe in ourselves, right? We want to get there. We want to say, yes, we need this. And because we've already spent a lot of money on something, we're convinced that we have to make it work. And if you are someone who grew up without a lot of money, or you're in a position where you're not used to having money, there's a lot of mindset work to do. There's a lot of money stuff around that. But one of the ways it will manifest itself is to make sure you make the absolute most of every single investment. And you sit there and you're like, I've got to make sure this works. And so I did. I held on for it for far too long, like ridiculous amounts of time, until a coach said, and I listened. And she had to tell me twice. And then she did. And I was like, yeah. You're right. Okay. I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And what's mad to me is I could have told any of my clients the same thing, okay? It was obvious, but it's not obvious to the person who it's affecting. It wasn't obvious to me. It was like I didn't want to know. So even if it was obvious, I didn't want to know. And that's really important for us to remember about self-awareness and about self-understanding of like, sometimes we have to ask somebody else and someone else needs to tell us something we don't want to hear, because I didn't want to hear it, but I had to hear it. And so I cancelled it, and I have still to this day never used it. I've never got in, I've never done the training. Like it's just a whole thing, and I spent a load of money, and it's annoying, but we also have to get over it and say, come on, move on, because what it did do was it cost me way more in my time and my worry and my stress, and that's what's worried me. The biggest issue I have with it is the fact that it's actually denied me of so much when I should have just put it in the bin from the day I bought it and said, there's nothing wrong with this item. It's amazing. It's great. It's so helpful. And it's so great for so many people across the globe, but it's not right for me right now in my business. And when I talk about on this podcast about doing things that work for you and doing things that's right for you, that's what I mean. I mean that no matter what I say, what anyone says, that is not what you are gonna, that means that it's right for you. It's right for you at the right time. And that's where you have to get really clear on your investments about, where is it in the long-term vision that this fits in? Because it might be the right investment at the wrong time. And that's something that can happen a lot. And often I say that, if someone wants to come and work with me one-to-one, they might not be there yet. And I might have to say, do you know what? I just don't think this is the right investment for you at this time. Once you've done X, Y, and Z and you're at this point, then come back and let's go from there. But you really have to think about the long-term vision. The other thing I was going to touch on, I know this is a longer episode and I try not to keep them too long, is where I see investments going wrong. Now, I've probably mentioned and dipped into this along the way of this episode, but I would just like to clarify where I see investments go wrong is where mainly the person who's delivering the investment is absolute rubbish, whether that's the product, the service, the person, whoever you are, or wherever you're at. That's one of the biggest issues I have when people are just when the person they've invested in is just not good, which I don't want to, this isn't like a bashing podcast. I'm not going to go into the red flags of what you should look for. If you're bothered about that and you want some support with that, reach out to me and I can let you know. But, just there's plenty of people who are not able to do what they're saying they're doing, or they aren't very, it's just not cool. And I don't know, it worries me. It makes me so sad, because what happens to me is often I end up with a lot of people come to me who have been through numerous coaches, consultants, whatever, or they've been to different people and then they come back to me or whatever. It's, I don't know, it's just really hard. And I don't like discrediting anyone's work, because I think everyone has something to offer at some point. But it's just a real difficult one. So please be careful of who you're investing in and, why they are the right person for you, because just because they're the right person for your friend might not mean that they're the right person for you. And the biggest thing I would say with that is avoiding that is look at values, look at who they are as a person and what they believe in. Because for me, it's I have to believe not everything, but a lot of similarities and, ride similar kind of belief systems with whoever I'm investing in. Whether that's I'm investing someone to help me with a client listening program, or whether I'm investing someone to, work with me one-on-one, or whether I'm looking for someone in my team. Like, be really clear on this. It's about what do you believe in, and that ultimately will kind of seep into everything you do. So be really clear on that. The next thing to think about is how much money should you invest in certain things? And this is something that we often come around to in different businesses. It's like, how much money do we spend? What do we spend it on? And there's not really an answer for this, obviously. There is for specific situations and different people. But one thing I'd encourage you to think about is the potential impact of what it can do. Now, often this is not quantifiable. Often people will try and quantify it, and it is hard to. But think about what can it do. And also, when I say can, it's not that it will or, it must. Because if you make investments based on it must provide something, it's inevitably never going to work. It just never does, or very rarely does. And if you are someone who thinks it should bring me X amount of money, then that also can get problematic because you're going into it with this like clear situation that it has to do this. So what I would say is be open and look at, if I'm going to invest this money, is it just dead cash? And there's nothing wrong with investing dead cash. When I mean dead cash, I just mean you invest in something, you experience something, then that's it, it goes away. Or is this something that you're investing in because actually the potential of it could be massive? That's the kind of thought process you go on. And you're probably never going to know that until you try it. And so, I've spent so much money in my business on stuff where it's just a trial and error. It's like, well, you don't really know. So you kind of just got to take a guess at some point. And I don't think you can ever future-proof an investment because there's too many external factors. We can do all the research, we can do all the prep, all the rest of it, but, COVID happened, there's natural disasters happen, there's so many different things that happen that you have no clue over, you have no control over, there's, cybersecurity, there's so many things depending on what you're investing in, you don't know, human behaviour, you don't know what you don't know, that's another big thing, which is huge, but you also don't know what is the right thing for you. So be open with the fact that you've got to disassociate from this thing of money being the big be all and end all and control and everything, because the sooner you can let go of this idea that every single penny I spend in my business has to make me back some money, the better your investments will become. Because the more you can lean into trust and self-regulation and allowing yourself space to breathe and make mistakes with money, the more it's going to pay you back in the long term, I believe anyway. And I've seen that from myself of like, you make one investment, it really pushes you, you go again, you make another, and you get to a point where you think, wow, you look back and you made a lot of money and you've made a lot of investments, you've made a lot of mistakes maybe. But one thing that you have is a real much better understanding of what you're looking for and a better way of going about things and a better way of understanding what does the business need? What do you need as a CEO? And when you think about how much money you should invest, I do say that you can't invest too much in yourself, which I know is a kind of funny term, and sometimes it makes me feel a bit weird when some people say it in a certain way, because I'm like, okay. But truly, I've found that, I never used to believe it. I used to think it was rubbish. I used to think it was people who were charlatans or people who were just weird scammers who would just say like, invest in yourself. But what I have learned is, as much as I don't want to believe it, it is true. And the more money I have invested in myself, the more successful I've got, and the more I have grown into the person that I am today and that I will be in the future. And one thing I want to say to you, and this leads on to my final point about what investing won't do for you, is that investing allows you to step up to the person that you've always been inside of you but is waiting to come out. And for some of us, that's a real journey, and it's a real painful one, and it takes a lot of time. But once you do that, the money pays off so much. And so for me, I spend a lot of money on, and when I look at investments in my business, I don't spend a lot of money on cars. I don't spend a lot of money on making investments that are I don't want to say unnecessary, that's wrong. That's not the right word. Making investments that are arguably, how do I put this? See, it's hard, right? Because everyone values different things. But for me, well, let's just talk about what I do, because then it's easier. I spend money on things on me, which sounds very selfish, but I've found the more money I invest in me and what I'm doing and the business in terms of things that affect me on a day-to-day basis, making my life easier, the easier it is for me to grow into who I need to become, to get to that longer term vision. So I am always open to spending money on myself, and that's a journey, because at the beginning I didn't like it, and I was not the nicest to myself. And now I've got over that. Now I know that that's the only way for me to fully access the person that's inside of you. Because you are not broken, I am not broken, we don't need fixing. You don't need fixing, I don't need fixing. But what we do need sometimes is the support and the help to get us there, to get us out of our shells, to move us beyond what we believe is possible. And for me, that comes through investments. If you can get that through a different source, amazing. I am yet to find that for me personally. And so for me, it's about constantly investing in myself. And as I constantly invest in myself, more of the onion unveils, and more of the person, the leader, and the amazing businesswoman that I am comes out. And I would encourage you to go on that journey yourself. And as I said, if you can get there without investing, perfect. But for me, I couldn't. Like, for me right now, it's like, no, that the journey of investing in myself has allowed me to really uncover that. The other thing on this note, if you're interested in me and my journey and what I've seen work for other people as well, is to not shop around too much. This is something people don't talk about. I am someone who has stayed with certain coaches for a long time. I have built relationships with certain people who support me over a long period of time. Some people are complete opposite. They're like, no, I want to go in, get what they can offer me, get out, go to the next one, blah, blah, blah. For me, that hasn't worked. I don't work like that in business. I prefer a longer term, someone fully understanding me, someone knowing who I am, knowing the business inside out, knowing the growth journey. And so for me, I have found the best help to be for people and, coaches and mentors and people that can support me over a longer term basis. And so I've been known to, re-sign contracts many times and that kind of thing, because I value that. You might not. You might be like, no, I just want to get in, get all the information I can, get on to the next person. And that's fine. Again, this is about what works for you. However, what I have seen interesting is that I've seen a real correlation in my own business of clients who choose to stay with me for a long period of time do tend to go on a really big growth journey within themselves and also expand into their business at a faster rate. Now, I can't say that this is fact because it's not a valid study. It's not a study. It's just me talking about my observations. But I have noticed that, and I noticed that with other people in the industry there's people who sign into 6-month, 12-month containers, or they re-sign and they end up being with someone for 24 months or longer. Those people tend to be the people who commit the most and go the furthest. Now, that could be just because they're more tuned into this idea of long-term gratification and delayed gratification and seeing that as an option. And so that might be the reason why. I'm not coming in here to tell us all the reasons why it is or isn't, but I just wanted to put that in your head about one of the reasons you might feel like your investments aren't working for you is if you're someone who shops around a lot and goes from one to the next, because a lot of people do really well with finding someone they really gel with, someone they really work well with, and making investments time and time again. Obviously, you could turn around and say, well, mate, you're selling something, so it makes sense for you to want people to stay longer. Yes, that's fine. You can have that opinion. I'm just saying, from me personally, from a buyer's perspective, I am also in that world of seeing the benefit from a longer term relationship perspective. So that's something I just wanted to touch on for you, because I know sometimes people are like, I've made these investments, but I'm not sure that they've actually helped me in the areas that I was hoping for or at the speed that they were hoping for. The other thing I want to say on that is be careful of people who can claim that you're going to fix your whole business in such a short space of time, because I just really struggle with that concept. Anyone who works with me knows that I don't sell people based on how much money they can make, and I don't also tell people based on how much you can achieve over a time period, because it's hard. Some businesses come in and work with me and they can totally transform in 6 months, and that's great. They can do it in 3 months, but that's not the norm, and I wouldn't want to say that to people. So be realistic and be open and understanding of what things take. And sometimes, depending on how big your dream and your vision is, it's going to take you a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. You haven't failed if your business takes time. I think some of us have bigger aspirations and goals than others, and so if you're building a business that makes you $5,000 a month, then yeah, come and work with someone like me and I can get you there in 3 or 6 months potentially. But if your dream is to make 10 million a month, or 10 million a year, then, and you're starting from nothing, then yeah, it's going to take us a decent chunk of time, and being willing to commit to that investment for a period of time is really important. So that's something I wanted to touch on. The other thing to touch on is about the duration and the length. If you are someone who's found that their investments are not really paying off for them, look at how long have you been investing in them. If you're investing in containers that are like 3 months, less than 3 months, short-term bursts of support, that might be why they aren't paying off for you, because you potentially need a longer term thing. So for me, for example, I am very self-sufficient and I'm very actionable about what someone's telling me, but I appreciate that longer term relationship and I respond best to regular check-in. So for me, I make investments where I'm going to get a regular, and when I say regular, I just mean like twice a month or once a month, or, you know, at some point there's a consistent thing. It could be that there's an availability to talk to someone every day if I wanted to. That sort of thing, having that there as a security blanket means so much for me when I'm making an investment. So often, you know, if I'm investing in a coach, for example, I appreciate having the option of like a Voxer support or an email support. Maybe it's 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week. Do I actually use it? No, I don't. And that's a whole other thing you can, like, when I say no, I don't. Sometimes I do. But I mean, do I use it every day? Very rarely, no. Do I use it once a week? Maybe, who knows. But most of the time, I'm like paying for it because I'm paying for the convenience of knowing that it's there if I need it. And if shit hits the fan and I do need something, then I can be there. But the reality of it is I'm buying more of a comfort blanket than I am of like, I'm actively going to do that. Because when we go back to me assessing my time, I know that I don't have the time in the day to check in with a coach every single day for however long. I just don't. So be really clear with yourself. And some of you are going to be sat there thinking you are absolutely ludicrous. Why on earth would you pay for something that's potentially very expensive that you know you're not going to use? That's fine. That's because I know what works for me and I know what helps me perform at my best. And that might be that I know I have a security blanket there should I need it, when I need it. So be really clear on yourself. This is deep stuff. This is about going inwards and unpacking what is going on with your investments. This is not just a surface level conversation we've had today about, oh cool, let's look at your investments. I'm talking about, let's go deep, let's unpack them, let's see what you need. There is nothing wrong with spending a lot of money on something that you might just need a security blanket for. Because if that means you can show up every day in a certain way, then that is hella worth it. 100% worth it. But to some of you, it might not be. So you've got to start learning things about yourself, but often you can't learn things if you don't just do it. So you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you're going to experience until you try it. So be really kind with yourself when you're making investments about what realistically do you want to offer someone? What can you offer someone? What are you looking for? What are you seeking from people? And from the people that are here to support you, whether that's in, you know, general business, whether it's in strategy, marketing, branding, like whatever it is, be clear. Also, I wanted to finally kind of round up on, how do you know if you should invest in a project, a longer term thing, a mastermind, a retreat, a one-on-one, like whatever it is, agency work, whatever. So when you're looking at working out, how do you know which one you should invest in? Be just really open with yourself about what internally is pulling you to invest in, and then go back to what we talked about, the ego stuff, and be really clear on, you know, what do I actually need versus what don't I need. The other thing to be aware about is that don't ask too many people for their opinion, I would say. Like, I do not ask people's opinion for investments I make in my business. Some of you are going to think that's really bad, but what I found is the more opinions you get, the more likely you're going to be to talk yourself out of it. And for me, that just doesn't, like, it's just not good. So I often make investments, and, you know, I can make like 5-figure investments, and I'm not asking anybody because I don't need to, it's my business. But I know for some of you that would be a big step depending on where you're at in business. Some of you will make 6-figure investments and not ask anyone. But if you are someone who is not used to making investments, then that might be something you need to talk to your partner about or talk to whoever. But depending on your risk appetite level will depend on where you're willing to go with your investments. But what I would say is be really like clear on the investment, what you want from it, where it's going to take you, where you're going to hold yourself accountable, what the expectation is, and then move forward and show up as much as you can from a place of ready to learn and ready to open your eyes to what is possible for you and your business. I love investing in my business. It has changed my business. The only reason I'm still in business is because I'm invested in it. Like my whole business runs through investment and runs through me, not being afraid to spend money. And I really funnel a hell of a lot of money in my, what would be profit into investing, and people have different opinions about that, and that's fine. This episode's not for that. But what I would say is make an investment. If you were sat through this whole thing and you've been using one investment as like a parameter of what you've been listening to, just go and make it. Like, your business could transform. Your business could completely change. Like, just go and make the damn investment and see what happens, because there's so much excitement beyond that and so much growth that will happen. Even if it's not the best investment you ever made, even if it's the worst investment you ever made, you're still going to learn something from it. So I would encourage you today to go and make that investment that you're unsure on or have been thinking about. And then please come and tell me what the investment is. I love hearing what people invest in. It makes me so excited when people are like, I've invested in this, or clients will be like, I've gone invested in this. I'm like, okay, amazing, cool. So come and tell me. I can't wait to hear. Speak soon, take care, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Honest Business Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you are subscribed. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others and leave a rating and review. To catch up with all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram @may.james_, where I share the raw, uncut, behind the scenes reality of what running multiple businesses every day truly looks like. As always, links and any resources that were mentioned in the episode will be in the show notes below. That's all for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time.